Hi everyone, it's Nick. Welcome back to my channel. Okay, in today's video, we are going to be talking about holiday decorating in different design styles. We talk a lot about design styles on this channel, but then I also talk about holiday decorating, and I thought it'd be fun to kind of combine the two. So, you can kind of take your Christmas or holiday decorations and bring them in, incorporate them into your existing interior design style, or at least borrow from some of these different design styles that are out there. There's also different retailers, of course, that sort of specialize in different design styles, and that can really help you sort of guide some of the decisions on how you can get decorations for the holidays that matches what you already have in your home. So you're not really feeling like you're kind of stuck where your design style and your Christmas decorations or whatever just are competing. So let's get to it. Okay, let's talk about holiday decorating in a traditional style. So let's give some ideas here for the traditional people out there, right? So the traditional style oftentimes feels really comfortable. It feels really warm. It feels really friendly. It's very familiar to us. You're gonna get lots of detail and ornamentation. Those are things that are really common in the traditional style. Also, it can read a little bit formal. So lots of placement on things like symmetry. That's really important in a traditional design style. So when you're decorating for the holidays, I think it's really important that you get decorations that sort of match into that style. And I would say that mixing in some of those traditional colors that you normally see in the holiday season. So if you celebrate Christmas, celebrating with red and green, incorporating that into the color scheme, red, green, cream, different tints, tones, and shades of those two colors can be really important. White also is really great as well. Those colors are traditional colors that we see in the holiday season regularly. They will fit beautifully into this style. There's also some really great traditional patterns, things like different plaid patterns that are already used in the traditional interior design style, but also can feel really comfortable and familiar in the holiday season as well. So having a throw in something like plaid can be a really great way to sort of add a little bit of a touch of Christmas or the holiday season while still incorporating in something that feels very traditional as well. So again, for color scheme, we're sticking with those sort of reds, those greens, whites, also those metallics, golds, silvers. These sort of colors just really evoke traditional while also feeling very Christmassy at the same time. Now, in terms of shapes, I think you can go quite detailed on here and it can still work really well in a traditional style because again, traditional styling does oftentimes have a lot of ornamentation in millwork or in its furniture pieces, things like that. So it could make a lot of sense to incorporate that. So things like nutcrackers, things like nesting dolls, things like really big, sort of beautiful stockings, nothing too simplistic. You can go kind of crazy here. You can have a lot of fun with sort of what we typically associate with Christmas, and it works really well in a traditional style. So mistletoe, wreaths, right? Big, beautiful, foliage, greenery, things like that work really well in a traditional style. And again, you can have fun with ribbons and bows and lots of different interesting patterns because that is what we seem to associate with traditional. And honestly, the classic Christmas decor fits so well in this style. And I think the reason for that is because a lot of the sort of cultural symbolism that we associate with the holiday season is also rooted in sort of this Victorian kind of era. A lot of the things that we borrow are very old, right? The Christmas tree and the stockings and a lot of these sort of holiday traditions, we borrow a lot from things that happened hundreds and hundreds of years ago. So it really blends well with the traditional style. So think old, think timeless. That's what you should be looking for, I think, when decorating for the holidays in a traditional style. Okay, next up, let's talk about contemporary or minimalist. So let's say you're into sort of more of a mid-century modern vibe or something a little bit more contemporary even. What do you do then? Do you have to stick to the sort of detailed Santas like we see in tradition, or can you move a little bit beyond that? I would say that if you want to match your contemporary style, you want to go for something maybe that feels a little bit more minimal, then I would focus a little bit on more simplistic shapes and more abstract shapes as opposed to going with the really highly detailed versions that we saw in traditional, right? So instead of going with something with lots and lots of detail, go with something a little bit more minimalistic. So maybe you're doing the snowman and you're doing the Santa and you're doing the little gingerbread house and you're doing the Christmas trees, but as opposed to sticking with the highly detailed stuff in the red and green, you're going for something in a little bit more pared down, much more simplistic. You're getting the shape of that object so people know what you're doing, but it's a little bit more minimalistic and it's a little bit more pared down and less detail. And it's gonna give a little bit more of a wink towards kind of Christmas decor without necessarily feeling as heavy-handed as it might in a little bit more of the traditional pieces that we all kind of know and expect to see from Christmas. I find CB2 is a really great retailer to shop at for this type of decor. I think they do a really great job. Crate & Barrel has some stuff too, but they lean a little bit more into the traditional. CB2, I think, is just a classic example of taking some of those traditional shapes and colors and really sort of turning them a little bit into more unconventional ways. Okay, next up, let's talk about organic modern, or maybe even a farmhouse sort of design style. What if you have that into your design style for your home? What would you recommend there for Christmas or holiday decorations? So for me, I would say here that a lot of this feels very earthy and very neutral in terms of its color scheme. So yes, you know, if you're gonna stick to some of those reds and greens and metallics and things, I would consider being a little bit more muted in sort of the color choices as opposed to the highly saturated stuff that you see in more traditional decor, right? Also leaning into a lot more of those neutrals and those earth tones. So beige, white, could be gray, could be black even. You could even have fun with that. And if you are gonna use some color, you totally can. But as I said, I would maybe stick to something a little bit more desaturated depending on your color scheme that you have in your own home. Also material choices. So with this style, you're gonna see less things like acrylic, like we saw in contemporary. You're also going to see sort of some of those less traditional materials, those classic materials, and you might start to see and have a little bit more fun with things like stone. You might have travertine, for example. You also might have things like knit patterns or rattan or paper, things that just sort of feel a little bit like more of a handcrafted sort of quality to them, because that sort of, to me, evokes that little bit more of that sort of farmhouse style where things are a little bit more casual, a little bit less sort of stuffy and formal like you will see sort of in those other kind of two styles. And it sort of feels just a little bit more handmade and a little bit more rustic at times. And if you're gonna go a little bit more on the organic modern style, I would say, you know, you might sort of want to, rather than necessarily going sort of for more of a handmade feel, you might choose to go for something just in terms of material choices, going for more natural materials. So again, you're dealing with travertine, lots of wood, but you might, again, because of the modern, you might want to sort of pare down some of those shapes to have them be a little bit more abstract in nature as opposed to being all the detailed stuff that you saw in traditional decor. And I think greenery, both faux and real, becomes really, really important with this style because again, we're looking for a lot of natural materials brought into these styles because they feel a little bit more rustic and a little bit more kind of handmade and a little bit more natural. So making sure you've got things like garlands, making sure you've got a beautiful tree, these things matter. Now, you don't necessarily always have to go for real. Some people can't because maybe they're in an apartment building that doesn't allow it, or they can't be bothered with the hassle, which is also kind of fair enough. Then going with something artificial can also make a lot of sense, but really just making sure you're investing in sort of higher quality artificial pieces, I think personally is a great idea because some of the cheap plasticky stuff is not really gonna give you the effect of that organic part of the organic modern because it's just gonna feel super cheap and plasticky. But if you do go artificial, making sure that you do a really good job, or you source pieces, go, you know, touch and feel them in the store and make sure that you really are happy with the quality to really show off that these are sort of natural materials, even if they're not natural materials. But at least you're trying to make them sort of feel a little bit more natural, which is going to fit a lot better with the organic modern or sort of farmhouse style. Okay, next up is going to be Scandi. So Scandi is known for being quite minimalistic, I think in a lot of ways. It's much more, it's a little bit kind of a touch of cottage, a little bit more folksy, I think, in terms of its styling, as opposed to sort of that minimalist style that we talked about earlier, the contemporary style, right? So Scandi is just a really interesting balance of minimal shapes. So I would keep the shapes to something a little bit more simplistic. So it's simple in nature, but it's also quite traditional in some ways as well, right? So it's got sort of a folksy, cottagey sort of charm to it that I think you just don't really so much get in sort of a traditional style. So dealing with lots of traditional Scandi sort of shapes and traditions can also be really important. If you are Scandinavian, feel free to weigh in the comments, but there are wonderful ones that you can also research, find a little bit more, that make a little bit more sense to you. And I would also add on that what's really important, I think, in a Scandi style, because it does read a little bit more neutral usually, so sticking with those white, grays, blacks, kind of beiges, a little bit more on the neutral color palette, is the importance of texture. So even in your Christmas or your holiday decor, I think it's really important to incorporate in throws, blankets, rugs. You could use fur or faux fur can work really well, just to really get a lot of texture, because you're probably not going to use a lot of color in your holiday decor, at least definitely not as much as we saw in some of the other styles that I've mentioned. But again, you can go with something a little bit more pared down in color, color, a little bit more sort of simple in shape, playing with texture, and adding in a lot of that really sort of interesting, fun, sort of whimsical charm that you sort of see in sort of a Scandinavian Christmas. I think it's a really beautiful design style. It's a timeless design style, and there's some really interesting, cute, fun, sort of quirky sort of home decor that you can play with in the holiday season that fits beautifully into this style. By the way, for affordable, great options, IKEA is a wonderful option to be able to source some of this home decor. I think it's, you know, obviously they always try to put a lot of sort of Scandi charm in a lot of their stuff at IKEA, and I think at the holidays they do a particularly good job of that. And of course, you've also got that really like strong focus on natural materials, greenery. That's really important in Scandinavian design in general, and is also continuously also true in the home decor as well that you would do for the holiday season. Okay, and then the last style I want to talk about is the retro style. So this is sort of an interesting one because I think this is very, very different than some of the ones that we saw before. So retro is sort of, for a lot of people, it's very nostalgic. Again, like in a different way than traditional. So if traditional is sort of a hallmark to Victorian times in some ways, I would say retro can just feel very like 70s, 80s, 90s. And for a lot of people, this is a really great style that I think they love now because it reminds them so much of their childhood Christmases. Retro is a broad category, but I would say that for me, it really kind of depends, of course, on what you grew up with in terms of what is retro to you. But I would really say a lot of focus on sort of unconventional Christmas or holiday decorations is really important. With this style, even more than any of the others, I think you can have a lot of fun with color. I wouldn't even necessarily say that you should stick to just red and green. You can have fun with purple and pink and green and, you know, whatever, orange. You can have whatever sort of color scheme you sort of want in a retro style. And it just sort of works because it's quirky and weird and it's meant to be sort of an abstract kind of collection of a bunch of stuff that you've picked up over the years, right? From the 70s to the 90s, whatever, right? Like you've got lots and lots of stuff that you're kind of throwing together and you're playing with lots of different colors, lots of different styles. It can oftentimes, I think this style in its Christmas decorations, it fits really well sort of with, kind of has almost a cheesy or sort of a tongue-in-cheek sort of a way of doing it. Because again, we're having fun with some of the old things that we've kind of had in years past and just sort of the quirky sort of Christmas ornaments that are a little bit weird, they're a little bit fun, they represent who you are, you pick them up, made you laugh that one time when you saw them at a store and you pick them up and now every year you put it up. You know what I mean? It's that type of decorations that you're seeing over and over. This works really well in sort of a postmodern style if you love that. If you love a maximalist style, I think this style works really beautifully. This is sort of an all-encompassing sort of category for all those sort of very new styles that are really popular right now. And I think that some of the Christmas decorations or the holiday decorations back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, I think work really well today. Some ideas could be like colored glassware. It could be tinsel, which I personally can't stand, but maybe you love tinsel. I don't know you, maybe you love it, but it is nostalgic. The tinsel garlands, they're very nostalgic, right? We all remember putting those up back when we were back in the 80s or not, well, I don't know when you're from, but it is nostalgic for a lot of people to put up those old tinsel garlands. Things like multicolored lights, right? I mean, like a lot of the other styles I talked about, you know, you might see more red and green, you know, or you might see more white. This is the type of style where I think you can have a lot of fun with multicolored lights. You don't have to have a specific one type of light. You can have every color you could think of. That multicolored lighting scheme that you can add to sort of around the house, inside the house, outside the house, just all over the place. Lots and lots of different types of color, different unexpected types of home decor. So again, you're not sticking to some of the more traditional shapes and styles that we've seen before. So yes, if you want to have fun with Santa, go for it. But if you want Santa sitting next to a palm tree in swim shorts, you can do that too, right? Like this, it's a bit of a weird, quirky style. And I think a lot of people love it for that reason because it's fun. And it reminds them of sort of the weird, quirky decorations that they had when they were kids. So have fun with ribbons, have fun with sort of popcorn garlands, whatever sort of ideas you have that sort of really feel very retro and feel like things that reminded you of when you were a kid, bring that into your new home decor. And again, I think it particularly works well if you have sort of a boho style, a postmodern style, some sort of quirky vintage kind of curated sort of style that you've kind of accumulated over time. Like if you have that type of space, that type of home, this style can really work for you. And don't be afraid of color. Don't be afraid of different colors. Lots of different options that are out there. And I think they all work really beautifully with this style. So that's it for me for today, you guys. As always, of course, you can decorate however you want. If you have a particular color scheme that you have in mind that doesn't really fit with your current design style, just go with it if you want to have fun. But I thought it was really great to think of how you have multiple different interior design styles that are out there that people are using all the time and how you can incorporate beautiful holiday decor into that existing style that you already have. So I hope you'll enjoy this video, and I will see you all the next one. Thanks, bye.